right, so now we're going to go on to the next paragraph. And I realized one of the things I hadn't mentioned was that I do recommend a 3-paragraph structure for this particular essay. I tend to find that 3 key ideas works really well and just gives you like a nice balance for the amount of writing you need to do. So you sort of going to be aiming for having about, let's say, 900 to 1,000 words in your structure. And then, of course, you'll be adding and changing and so forth when you get the actual question. So what I would recommend is, you're going to have the 100 to 130 words for your introduction. You have about 50 words for a conclusion, and then each paragraph should be about 250 to 300 words. Try to have them be a bit even. It doesn't look very good to have, one paragraph be 200 words and the next one to be 400. So make sure it's even. And if you sort of have that ballpark of 250 to 300 words each, then that should work quite well. So obviously we've already discussed the first idea here about Miller's overall purpose with the play. And just to recap the fact that, he's really critiquing the McCarthy period, and he's highlighting, or he's critiquing it by looking at the Salem witch trials and the inconsistencies that started emerging between the intentions of the community and the theocracy and the puritanistic government, which was to have unity, safety, morality, etc., and then the actual behavior that they engage in, which is very exclusionary and full of persecution and violence and injustice. So what we're looking at now is that fear that and that injustice that actually happens. So we've got the collective fear that motivates hysteria and notion of the individual. So just throwing in those rubric words like the collective will be considered as more like the, the puritanistic community. And then the individual is obviously the individuals that we look at that, sort of challenge that or affirm it or what have you. So just to begin with, I was going to have a look at Tituba. So she's sort of first off the chopping block in a way, because when the girls are discovered, because of the fact that she's got a different race, they're going to go straight to her and she's going to kind of cop the blame. So if we actually have a look at the play, so I'm going to draw your attention to, and I did in the previous ones too, an online version, which I just find quite handy to find quotes because you can do searches. But if you have a look here at this particular part, so you've got Tituba, Paris, and Putnam here. So there's and so what I want you to sort of notice is so many exclamations here. There are so many, there's so much hysteria that's building up. So if we go from here, so Tituba is saying like, I didn't do it, I don't compact with no devil. And Paris is saying, you will confess yourself or I will take you out and whip you to your death, Tituba. So that's pretty scary. And then Putnam saying, this woman must be hanged, she must be taken and hanged. So again, like the repetition, the the strength of those words, the violence of them. I mean, definitely the whip you to your death, that's extremely violent. And then the hanged and so forth. And then you've got poor Tituba here, terrified, falls to her knees. No, don't hang Tituba. I tell him I don't desire to work for him, sir. So that's obviously the devil. And so if you have a look there, it's the stage directions that are so potent. And you really do want to refer to stage directions in this particular text simply because it's a play, right? So obviously you've got plenty of great quotes to choose from, but do make sure that you have a variation so that markers can see that you understand the text type as a whole. So I've just got a little note there. So you've got these exclamatory sentences emphasizing the power and passion to demoralize those associated with the devil. And then you've got the stage direction. So like terrified, falls to her knees, so you can see like that emotion and that sort of that power is really emphasized to the fact that she falls to her knees. So obviously you get a visual result from that shows her lack of agency and her fear, right? That's promoting all of this hysterical behavior. So if we have a look next, so we've got, Abigail, she's doing a lot of the threatening. So she's become a very powerful individual in this particular play, as we see. To start with, that's to save herself, but then it starts becoming something that she uses to exploit others. Okay, so we've got Abigail like threatening the others. So she's saying, now look at you, all of you, we danced. And Tituba conjured Ruth, Putnam's dead sister. So like, throwing Tituba on the bus, obviously. And that is all. And mark this, let either of you breathe a word or the edge of a word about the other things, and I will come to you in the black of some terrible night, and I will bring a pointy reckoning that will shudder you. She goes on, and it becomes more and more frightening, but you can see that in her fear, she's now exploiting that fear for herself, so firstly to kind of save herself, and as I said, obviously to exploit others for later. But you just have this absolute breeding ground of fear and violence and threats, and everybody's trying to kind of save themselves, and it's a pretty scary situation for people. So that's another one you could use, obviously like the black of some terrible night. You've got that symbolism of the black and the pointy reckoning and the fear shudder you and so forth. So lots of really great language in there. And then the other one I was going to highlight, I won't actually go into it in the play itself, you can find it, but if you have a look here, so there's this notion that people are confessing, so and Proctor's saying, like, well, why shouldn't people confess if they're being hanged, like if they must hang for denying it? So there's such a hypocrisy there. Like, there's a thought that, because people are confessing to crimes, that must mean that, really getting somewhere. But the point is that if they didn't confess, they're going to be hung anyway. So people are just confessing so they don't die. So to kind of consider that, I mean, this is the very definition of coercion, and obviously an illegal practice now, but back then they thought it was just like really effective, obviously. So he's saying, this is an absurd way. Like, don't you think that, so there are them that will swear to anything before they'll hang. Have you never thought of that? Like, duh. So the rhetorical question, the hypocrisy there about, people confessing to anything just to save themselves. So again, we're coming back to this idea that there's this fear and persecution that breeds as a result of the political climate that was established, that paradoxical sort of inconsistency between like wanting to have safety and unification, but then having persecution. And then here's the persecution, here's the hysteria that the individuals are experiencing. And going a little bit further than that, like, people are just utterly dehumanized as a result of this, so you've got the individual's suppression of morality, because, people are being forced to conform. So even people that want to do the right thing aren't, because they're so scared of being persecuted that they're now lying. So like, it's so ironic, because what they want is a society that is going to be really moral and truthful and following all these Christian Puritan values. But then on the other hand, you've got this, the fact that they're forcing people to lie, and they're, getting people to be so scared that, they're not actually following the values that are trying to be established in the first place, right? So you've got Mary Warren, who obviously was initially with the girls, and she tries to do the right thing. So Proctor, basically forces her to admit that the girls are lying and to come to the court and basically tell them that's happening. But then what happens with that, and actually we might go to that in the book, is that she just like gets so scared, she just completely changes her mind. So let's see. Oh, geez, that was a common one. Okay, let's see if we can find it. Okay, so you might have to find it. But basically, when she actually goes and, like when she's in the court scene, she just can't go through with it. And she's so scared. And so the reason I really like that one, compare it, here we go, found it there. So, we've got the fact that, like she's basically accusing them, and Danforth saying like, what's going on here? Like, tell us what's happening. And then Abigail and the other girls are starting to act like Mary Warren is, doing something to them. So that she's taken this form of a bird, and obviously she's with, like, you know, with the devil and so forth, and they start hysterically screaming. And you can see Mary Warren staring in horror. I cannot, and the girls are like, I cannot. They're copying. Proctor's there trying to get Mary Warren to do the right thing, and she just can't. She just can't do it. So the girls are just going crazy. Look out, she's coming down. And then she and all the girls run to one wall, shielding their eyes. And now, as though cornered, they let out a gigantic scream, and this is the bit here. And Mary, as infected, opens her mouth and screams with them, right? So Mary's just gone, nah, can't do it. She's just run off to join them again. And I really like that technique because you've got the simile there comparing her to having an infection. And that's a really good technique because an infection is obviously like a disease, right? So what Miller's doing here is comparing this hysteria to a disease, something that is really poisoning the community and just, horrendous. So that's a good one. And again, it shows how that hysteria is having a really detrimental impact on the individual and the collective. And then if we have a look at the next one here, Proctor then, like, he starts being tortured. And so that, again, looking at the dehumanization of the individual, we get some really good images of him, sort of in that position of just being stuck. Like, they are trying to get him to confess, and he says he's going to confess, but then he just isn't able to go through with it, right? So initially he is going to confess. Let's see here. It's towards the end here. It's in Act 4. Here we go. So, Elizabeth's saying, I can't judge you, John, like, you just have to do what you have to do and so forth. And then Proctor's saying, then who will judge me? Suddenly clasping his hands, God in heaven, what is John Proctor? What is John Proctor? So, like, the repetition of looking at his identity and the fact that he's got this real, like, moral struggle that he's experiencing. And then that, again, another similar, he moves as an animal, and a fury is riding in his tantalized search. So, that as well, like, you can see he's being compared to an animal. So he's just really dehumanized through this. I think it is honest. I think so. I'm no saint, so yeah, you just see all of this struggle that he's experiencing because he's obviously been accused. He hasn't done anything. On a witchcraft basis anyway, but he will hang if he doesn't confess. So now he was going to confess, but then we move on to really the last paragraph, which is so important, which is to look at the individual's need to rebel. And regardless of the fact that it may cost you your life, Miller is really advocating for people to stand up for what's moral, what's right, for justice, regardless of what it costs. And for Proctor, obviously, it costs his life. So in the next video, we will have a look at how to address that one.